Conversations with strangers on mass transit. In my late teens and early 20s, I took train rides and buses more often than until recently I realized. I think I was once on something like a trolley in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Perhaps it was a tram. I'm not sure of the definition of tram. Perhaps a tram is a trolley. Get back to me. Between September of 1978 and May of 1982, I took buses and trains from Long Island to Rhode Island. Actually, my father drove me to Bristol RI for my first landing at the campus of Roger Williams College, but I certainly took public transportation back down at Thanksgiving. I remember the shock of seeing a daily news headline at a Grand Central Station news vendors saying 400 people had just swallowed lethal Kool-Aid in a place called Guyana. I had a sack of laundry the size of Rhode Island on my back as I loped through Grand Central toward a subway train which might take me to Penn Station. The hideous headline and the people urinating on themselves and lying in puddles of their own vomit caused me to leap into a train without getting a ticket first. Turnstile historians tell me if this could have happened. It comes back to me now. I simply had to have obtained a subway token, despite the numerous young men about my age scrutinizing every disembarking passenger. They were on this side of being passed out on a concrete stair, and I kept patting my back pocket to see if my wallet was still on my timorous person. The laundry sack was humiliating to carry. It must be that when the subway got me to Penn, I leaped onto a train without a ticket. You could pay on board then. You can now, too, but it feels like something you can't do anymore. The conductor came around and I was $2 short. If this was because I didn't try to find out the price of a ticket from Penn Station to Huntington, I am ashamed of my 18-year-old self. My theory is I'd known the price of a ticket to Huntington, but hadn't thought of the possibility of a fee for people who didn't have a ticket when boarding. The conductor continued taking people's tickets and said he'd come back to me. I looked across the aisle at a world-weary businessman and said, "I'm really embarrassed." My Guyana-sized laundry sack spoke my humiliation profoundly, and he dug $2 from his wallet. I think I asked him a few minutes later if he'd seen the headline on his copy of the paper. I forget if he answered. The conductor came back into our car, and I paid. He took the hole puncher and punctured the jumbo ticket a passenger paying on board receives, and continued his rounds. Old hand that I was after Thanksgiving, I took the train from Penn to Providence with a duffel bag full of folded cleanliness, fitted it on the rack of my seat. It was a crisp day, and even the scratched hard plastic window I leaned my sleepy head against hinted that there was a burning sun beyond. I shut my eyes and envisioned the search for a bus from the train station in Providence to Bristol and a walk from the bus stop to the campus. I heard an unclamping and then another. A man next to me had an attaché case open. He took out some documents, closed the case, and, standing, put it next to my duffel bag. He sat down. "I'm sorry to wake you," he said. His gracefully thinning hair of corn yellow, complemented by gold-rimmed glasses, brought me awake. "I'm sorry to wake you," he said. I'll read it again. His gracefully thinning hair of corn yellow, complemented by gold-rimmed glasses, brought me awake. "Oh," I said, "I hadn't realized I'd fallen asleep." I saw that next to the attaché case, on the side opposite my duffel bag, lay a jacket and a scarf of warm material. "I didn't want to wake you," he added. I still don't remember if he'd got on at Penn Station or in Connecticut, but I think he'd have been unobtrusive at either stop. I can't even remember if the train was crowded. Maybe it was assigned seating. Was it Amtrak? What I know is he was next to me, not much older than I, and he was telling me in a kindly voice that he'd just landed a contract with a TV network for a production of his script. In our small talk, he'd learned that I was studying creative writing, and his intuition was right. I would be interested in his journey toward a TV deal. For the next 40 minutes or so, he told me how he and his co-writer, his fiancée, went about researching the story they scripted. I was secretly disappointed that this gentle, prematurely balding, sincere man who'd thought to tell me that writing actually paid off was ostensibly straight. But I had certainly not said, "Before you tell me your success story, I'm gay." So I kept listening. I looked into his soft blue eyes as he said, "Our script's title is..." You will not hear the real title from me, but I have never forgotten it or his name, which he stated knowing I wanted to know it. The title was along the lines of Love Leads Us, and I've looked it up in connection with his name. It was produced, and from the still pictures I've found online, 80s hair had begun. You can practically hear the synth music. But I think he'd pitched it to anyone, professional or not, who'd listen to an articulate, polite, considerate man. He knew I wouldn't mind. I remember resisting looking at the contract which lay on his seat when he excused himself to use the restroom. His glasses, so much a part of him, lay on top of it. I left them untouched and looked out the semi-opaque window. Shortly after he returned to his seat, the train arrived at his stop, and he told me he and his fiancée would have a little champagne that night. Just a little, he said. He stood and put on his warm jacket and scarf. He put the contract in his attaché case. He did not forget his glasses. I picture the writing duo facing executives, telling them that Love Leads Us was researched. Could it be the executives were moved? No, it is impossible. They liked him. They probably liked her, too. It was a miracle it was made. They say nice guys finish last, but I'm amazed they finished at all. If high-speed rail is ever allowed in California, perhaps I can speed my story up now. You'll recall my horror on my first ride down from college at the sight of people lying in their own vomit. Well, sophomore year, I took the train back to college a week after waking up on a blanket of my own upthrown peppermint schnapps. It was at the house of a friend who'd had a bunch of us over. As his stereo played Led Zepp 1 at the top volume, I was raving about "What happens if the general is dead?" The same side of the record played all night, because my friend left the ejection arm to the right, and came to at dawn. I wiped my vomit-covered face with the dry part of the quilt I'd passed out on and walked from Northport to Greenlawn. As I entered the kitchen door, my mother said, "Leave Fred alone. He looks a little weird." So on the train to Providence a week later, I was in a weird space as a woman precisely my age put her suitcase on the rack and sat next to me. She was bundled up against the cold and, asking if I was cold, started telling me about plays she'd seen and friends who wrote. I always managed on my train rides to sit by a window and to tell people I studied creative writing. "You look cold," she said. "I have a sweater." She got up, pulled her heavy luggage down, and got a fluffy sweater out. I was as mute as a monk as I accepted the loan. She got out somewhere just before Providence, but she talked to me as an equal. She used phrases she knew I'd understand, such as "wondrous strange." She said that phrase about 5 times. I could hardly respond. I was wondering if I was going to drink that night, and if I did, would I stop? She talked about the egos of actors and the beauty of the frick. As the train pulled into Providence, she asked me for the 3rd time, "I'm not bothering you, am I?" She put her hand out as she said this the last time. "No," I said. We got up, ready to disembark. "It was nice talking to you," I said. I'd given her her sweater back a few minutes before. I wasn't verbal enough to thank her. The ride I took in Cambridge, Massachusetts was during my junior year. A few of my old friends from sophomore year brought me on what we called a road trip to visit a friend who dropped out. We picked him up in Reading. We drove to Boston and saw, and I am misspelling these because I'm afraid if I leave the Substack app to Google this, I'll lose this piece of writing, Faneuil Hall and a record store near or on Copley Square. We decided to split up and meet somewhere. The friend we'd come to visit told me to board what I think was a trolley going to Cambridge. I remember it being lemon yellow and lime green. I sat down in a curved seat. My friend sat across from me, and a plump woman with platinum blonde hair and a big grin sat next to me. She and I were at right angles to each other. The ride could not have been incredibly long, but she packed a lot of information in during the time allotted. She extracted from me the fact that I was going to college in Rhode Island, and that I was from Long Island, and that I'd never seen Cambridge. She told me she knew Cambridge well, and was most fond of it. She told me she was a graduate student, and which events were worth taking in. "Do you like classical music?" she asked. "New wave?" "You mean like Godard?" I said. Clever what? She said, and added, more like talking heads. My friend, across from the lady and me, looked at me with the expression only someone from the suburbs of Boston can present to a newcomer who is getting on in Cambridge. I'm not sure the lady realized he was with me. He'd had prep school, half a 4-year stint at Roger Williams, and more than his surfeit of me. The grad school lady gave me a look which said I was missing Cambridge if I was missing such banter as hers. But she looked knowing and serene. I'd have loved not having to get off the trolley.